I am an alcoholic and a poster child. My name is Paula. So when Patrick asked me to do this, and thank you for the honor of this, truly. Wow, those lights really are bright. I was really, really honored. I've spoken at a few meetings at Old Kent and some other places, but this meeting in particular, before COVID, I'd come to this meeting, and I knew what he was trying to create, and I heard about all these people who were coming in from all over the country and other countries in the world, and I was like, wow, he has to home me. Like, I get to do this, and I'm local. So I was really honored, and I thank you. And I want to thank the beautiful ladies who supported me tonight, Melanie, Sana, Ann, Noelle. These are ladies who are all really, truly special to me, and there's a lot of you who are really special to me in this audience. So I've gotten a lot of texts and phone calls this week, like, hey, are you the Paula R that's going to be speaking at the meeting? And I'm like, yeah, like you heard it? So this really is a cool deal. So my sobriety date is February 6th, 1988. I got sober in Sacramento, California, but I'm a Colorado native. And one of the things that I have kind of been raised with in AA speaker meetings is what it was like, how'd you get here, and what it's like now. And I kind of like that model. and I like to storytell. So, Colorado native, let me just start there. I was born in Brush, Colorado, Breech, which means behind first, in the back seat of a car. So let's just start there. Let's just say that right there is the beginnings of some alcoholic behavior, roots, generational stuff that really goes a long way. My family are all restaurant and bar people in Denver, and so I grew up in the bar business. When I was born, my mother had a 2.5-year-old. She was 19, she turned 20 a month after my birthday, and 3 years later, my little brother was born. So by the time she was 23, if I'm getting my numbers right, she had 3 kids. We all 3 had different fathers. And we had a lot of just kind of raucous life growing up. Let me just say that I joke a little when I say we had an above average dysfunctional family. And that's true. There was a lot of chaos, there was a lot of drinking, there was a lot of moving and neglect, and life was crazy, and it was hard. It was hard. There was a lot of abuse in pretty much every form. I transferred schools 13 times before I dropped out. So there was chaos. It was incredible. By the time I was 12 years old, I wanted to understand what was the big deal with this drunk thing that I had seen so much of growing up. And I got drunk for the first time with intention. First time I got drunk, I blacked out. And I woke up vomiting. I went into the next day, and the only thing I could think of that next day was, I can't wait to do it again. And what had happened in that first blackout was, for the first time, the fear and the terror and the neglect and the sadness and the chaos stopped. I had numb, and I didn't remember anything. And while there's a whole lot of the trauma drama that I don't remember, I can say that when I started drinking and started blacking out, I didn't like that. I didn't want to black out. I didn't want to be like a lot of these adults that I grew up with. And I remember thinking, as small as like 4 and 5, like, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be that kind of an adult. However, the ball started rolling. So by 14 years old, I was into pretty much anything I could get in my body to shut it down, to alter the way that I thought and felt. By the time I was 16, I was real clear. I got a problem. I've got the family bug. This is what I am. By the time I was 18, I wanted it to stop. I wanted to break the chains. I didn't want to be that way anymore. So I left Colorado and I went to Clearfield, Utah, the Job Corps program. So does anybody in here know the Job Corps program? Oh, there's a few. Cool. So the Job Corps program is for young people aged 16 to 24, most of them sent there by the courts, it's run by the Department of Labor, and they pay you to go. Now, at 18 years old, I was a high school dropout. My primary option for a vocation was I was going to go get a job with all of my buddies who worked at Shotgun Willie's. And I walked in to Shotgun Willie's. I sat at the bar. I got an application. And when I started to fill it out, I could smell like that old stale booze. It was empty. It was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I had a memory of when I was like 5 or 6 years old, of sleeping in this little shack where my mom had worked at the bar in front of the shack. There's a place called the Oak Alley Inn. Anybody familiar? There's a few. The Oak Alley Inn became Hanson's, but the Oak Alley Inn was a bar that she was a bartender at, and we had to sleep in this little shack when she worked on the nights when she couldn't get childcare. And I hated it. It was scary. So here I am in Shotgun Willie's, and I smell the smell, and I'm like, oh, I can't do this. What am I doing? It was my first moment of clarity. I walked out of there, I ripped up the application, and I went straight to the Job Corps office and applied to leave town. And they paid my way to go. They gave me a vocation. They gave me a little monthly paycheck. They saved money for me. Every month that you're there, you get a little bit of readjustment money. And while I was there for 18 months. The second day that I was there, I took the GED test and I passed it. And the instructor was really surprised at my time. Now, I don't know about you, but many, many of the people that I know in Alcoholics Anonymous are highly intelligent. We're really cool people, especially sober. So I passed this test. She tells me I passed it quickly. She tells me that I've got eligibility to go get college credits, and I'm like, what? Now, I'd never had an accomplishment. I didn't graduate high school. I didn't get a good job. I lived my entire existence trying to escape feeling. And it didn't matter what it was. I didn't want to feel it. I just liked numb. I liked altered. So while I was there, this little accomplishment sparked a light. I want to figure out how to get more of this, feeling good about who I am. So I became like the center student representative. They sent me around the country to speak, and I was the president of my dorm, and I became an honor 4, which is like the highest you can get. And then Friday just kept coming every week. And every week, they would let us get on a bus and go to either Ogden or Salt Lake City and have some break, have some time away. And the first thing I did when I got off that bus was find my alteration. Didn't matter. I was kind of a garbage can. Alcohol was my choice, but if there was anything that I could get my hands on, that's what I was going to do. And somehow I stumbled my way back every weekend, and nobody really knew what was going on Friday and Saturday. So when I graduate the program, I come back to Colorado and I'm scared. I'm like, ooh, the only thing I know how to do in Colorado is find that party people. Find the people who are going to help me keep in this chained way of living my alcoholism. And I was afraid. So I was talking with a friend of mine from high school who lived in Sacramento. And she's like, well, you can come stay with me and my mom. Really? Now, California had been the big dream, right? I want to live in California. I'm going to go to California. I'm going to get out of here. So I planned this road trip to California. And before I got in this car, now I went with one of my close friends and the brother of the girl I was going to live with and her mom, who we had done a lot of partying together, and we'd had a lot of damage. Kind of dated, kind of didn't. It was not good. So before I got in this car, I'm like, I'm going to not drink anymore. No more cigarettes. I'm not smoking weed. No boys. I'm just gonna go and change my life. I've got my little clerk typist certification, a graduated Job Corps. I'm gonna go get my life together. I didn't make it to Colorado Springs before I broke all four. I was fighting with Joe, I was drinking, we had weed, I mean, it was just terrible. What should have been about a 19-hour road trip took us over 4 days. It was brutal. Here we are. And by the time I got there, the shame, the self-hatred, I broke another promise. I'm not breaking any chains. I'm not doing anything different. I'm an alcoholic. What do I do? So I get to Sacramento. I move in. I'm looking for jobs. I'm trying to do this thing. And the first job that I found was an under the table job driving cars with a bunch of drunks and junkies. So I'm like, it's cash. I need money. I took that job, and I ended up migrating to the same behavior that I had here. So what I thought was a geographic, right? I'm just going to try a new place. It didn't really start out that way. And I'm living with my friend and her mom, and one of the bad things about my blackouts is volatility. I can't tell you what I was so angry about. I can't tell you what all of the damage that was coming through when I drank. I can't tell you what all the trauma that was surfacing when I drank, because I don't remember. I had those glimpses of throwing things and cussing and yelling and trying to pick fights and then not remembering why. I don't know. I don't know what my problem was. And apologizing and apologizing. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I got so sick of saying, I'm so sorry. And one morning, I was standing on the balcony of our little apartment on the second floor. Now, what you may not know about Sacramento is that there are more trees in Sacramento than any other city in the United States. Well, at the time, this was 1988. So I'm looking out over all these amazing trees. There's many, many different species of trees, palm trees and pine trees, and it was cold. And I was like, all right, God, if you are real, I need help. And I was standing, I knew that I had to go back into the apartment and apologize to my friend and to her mom. And I was just dreading it, and it was cold, and I didn't want to go in. But I lived there. And I did go back in. I did say I was sorry again, and I would love to tell you that that was the last time I said I was sorry. I would love to tell you that that was it, but that was not it. I don't know how many more its there were. I don't know how many more apologies there were, but what I can tell you is that one of the things that happened in Sacramento, with my readjustment money, I bought a little car. I had this little down payment on a 1978 Chevette that I didn't know how to drive because it was a stick shift, that had a busted radiator, that had no radio, and 20 years old, you need a radio. So the lemon law in California says you can take the car back within 3 days and get your deposit back, so that's what I did. Now, what I haven't shared yet is that everywhere I went, in Denver, I knew the city grid of Denver, and there's probably a few of you here who know it pretty well too, that I can tell you pretty much what every number of whatever street is, east or west, north or south. And so I knew my way around, but I hitchhiked everywhere. Everywhere. That was my primary mode of transportation. Gratefully, I never got in a bad car. That is the grace of God, I will tell you that. So here I am, with my little bit of money back in my pocket. They have their little Chevette, and I'm hitchhiking. And this guy rolls up in this old beater car, and he's wearing a leather vest, and he's got tattoos, and he's got long hair, and he gives me a ride. And as we're on this ride, he's, so where are you going? And I'm like, I just need to get home, And he was giving me a ride home, and we just started to chat, and he starts talking about how he's clean and sober. And I'm like, man, I really need some people who don't drink or use drugs. Like, I need to know some people like that. Everybody I know is such a loser. That's that's my correlation, that's my denial, that's how we operate. And so he starts talking about Narcotics Anonymous. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, yeah, we go on motorcycle rides, and we have these raft trips, and we have picnics, we have dances. And I'm like, oh my God, that sounds so fun, right? He never once said that we go to meetings. He didn't say anything about that, right? So I'm like, cool, let's change numbers. Now, to backtrack a tiny bit, I have to throw this in here. At 16, one of my best friends got put into rehab for massive drug and alcohol use, and her parents made her sign a contract that she would never speak to me again. She was sentenced to Narcotics Anonymous. And she called me a couple of times from churches, and she was like, oh my God, these people are really cool. Like, I'm really liking these meetings, and I'm really kind of liking what everybody does. And I remember hearing like the smile in her voice and the sincerity, and just feeling like, wow. When he talked about it in that ride, I'm like, okay, so I know something about this. This isn't so bad. So I would call him like on a Friday or Saturday, hey, is anybody going on a motorcycle ride? Is there one of those dances? How about a raft trip? He'd call me like on a Tuesday, hey, you want to try one of those meetings? So I'm not really sure the timeline or how long this went, but I can tell you that on a Tuesday morning, February 1st, 1988, I woke up ashamed. The incomprehensible demoralization. I don't remember what I was yelling about. I don't remember why I was throwing things, but I was embarrassed. And I had to clean the bathroom that I had messed up because I vomited. And those of you who know this is a really hard thing to do when you're really hungover and ashamed. And I thought, I gotta call this guy. It occurred to me, I need to call this guy. So I get on the phone, and I call this guy. And I'm like, so, you going to a meeting tonight? I think I might want to try that. And he's like, yeah, I'll be there like at 6:30, there's a meeting at 7. I was like, okay. Then I got super nervous, and I got super scared. I started really freaking out, like, oh my God, I'm actually gonna do this. And I spent the whole day, one, apologizing to my roommates and letting them know I'm sorry, and again. And I mentioned I'm gonna try one of these meetings. I'm gonna go to a meeting with that guy. What guy? Well, the one, that doesn't drink or use drugs, the one that does those meetings, So, as the time is approaching, I have this thing in my brain that I'm gonna go to this place where people are clean and sober. So I'm gonna see some of these, like navy blue jogging suits and the crisp white tennis shoes. And some guys are gonna be in these business suits, and they're gonna have little dishes of granola, and they're gonna have these pitchers of ice water and, tile floors. Now, mind you, this guy picked me up in a leather vest, torn jeans, tattoos, long, greasy hair. But in my mind, where I was going was this place kind of like super church. So I really was torn. Am I gonna wear the black leather jacket or the brown leather jacket? Should I wear jeans? Should I wear a dress? I spent more of the day figuring out what I was gonna wear and so stressed over what it was gonna be like to be around these people. So I wore blue jeans. I wore a yellow sweater. At the time, I hated yellow. Never would have worn it. I put on the brown leather jacket, not the black leather jacket, and I put a beret in my hair. I never, ever put a beret in my hair. I never wore yellow, and I never wore the brown leather jacket. But I had this thing. I want to impress these people. I want these people to like me. I want to, do something right, So he calls me at about 6:40. My car's not going to start. I'm so sorry, I can't make it. Oh, thank God. The relief in that moment was huge. I didn't tell my roommate. The first thing I was going to do was go find the place I'd partied at the night before. And 2 minutes later, when I went to pick up the phone to find my party buddy, he was on the other line. I got to borrow a car, I'm going to be right there. And he hung up. Literally, it was like a 10-second conversation. So I put So I took out the beret and I threw it. I was like, not wearing a beret. And he takes me to the North Alano Club in North Sacramento. The North Alano Club in North Sacramento is the biker club of like the whole Northern California area. Everybody's in a black leather jacket. And nobody's wearing yellow. Nobody has a beret in their hair. So I go to my first meeting, and I was nervous, and I was trying to pay attention, and it wasn't easy. But I sat there kind of in awe, because something occurred like right then, right there. I witnessed light in the eyes of people who understood incomprehensible demoralization. I saw light in the eyes of people who had been to prison, who had killed other people, who had done intravenous drugs, things I had not done. And when I listened to some of them speak and some of them laugh, something kind of struck me, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like kind of incredible. I was really kind of taken aback. And at the end of the meeting, they called on me. Was there anything you want to say? You're new. I was sitting at the door, just chain smoking in my yellow sweater, because I was so freaked out and just trying so hard to hear what they had to say, but it was not easy. And all I could say, and I remember this to this day because it was important, all I can say is that the gift of a good example, you guys offer me the gift of a good example, and I appreciate that gift. It was it. That's all I could get out because I was nervous, but I saw that these people were doing something that I had no clue how to do, but I wanted to do it. Like, I wanted to figure this thing out. How do I live my life? How do I show up on time? How do I honor my word? How do I wake up not hating myself? I wanted to figure this stuff out. So that night, after the meeting, we all go over to the guy's house who picked me up hitchhiking. And we have coffee. Now, I've never had coffee at 9 o'clock at night. And I'm used to being at a house full of bikers where there's like a lot of booze, a lot of drugs, and a lot of people hogging the bathroom. You know, what is this? And they're laughing, and they're smiling, and they're sipping coffee. And my grandmother drank coffee, and I was really close with my grandmother, so I got a little cup of coffee with cream and sugar. And I sat as far into the corner of the living room as I could, and I just kind of took it in. And on Saturday, they had this big ride coming up. They were going to go on a motorcycle ride. And one of the gentlemen in the room was Dave. And he's like, well, I don't have anybody to ride with. Do you want to go? I was like, well, yeah. So this was Tuesday. And they had Dave give me a ride home. And on the way home, he was like, so what's your drug of choice? I know this is AA, but I got to tell you the real story, and that's a question in NA. And I'm like, well, I smoked a lot of weed, like a lot of weed. And, and I drank a lot. And he was like, well, alcohol is a drug. Hadn't occurred to me. And I was like, oh, well then that's definitely my drug of choice. That was definitely my drug of choice. So he drops me off on Tuesday. We've got a plan for Saturday. And in my mind, they just didn't do their drug of choice. I didn't quite get that they didn't do any substance abuse. They just didn't do their drug of choice. So I've been sober since February 1st of 1988. But let me just tell you that a human being can really consume a great deal of marijuana in 4 days. So I got as high as I could for 4 days, and then I got a call from the guy who picked me up hitchhiking saying, hey, they're going to be there tomorrow at 10 a.m. And I just want to ask you, don't be loaded when they get there. It's probably a good idea. Don't be loaded. And what's funny about that is at first I was a little bit offended, like I'm going to be loaded at 10 a.m. I was loaded at 10 a.m. a lot. But I honored what he said. And at 10 a.m. the next morning, Saturday morning, February 6, 1988, about 10 Harleys rumbled into my apartment community. And I was like, they're here for me. And they made all this noise, and I was excited, and I made it right. I was wearing the black leather jacket and the black boots, and I was ready. And through Northern California into Lake Tahoe, into the ghost towns, and we stopped and had lunch. And at the lunch, they were ordering things like iced tea. And this is like bikers, you know, this is not the bikers I partied with. And we stopped at this place and had ice cream, you know, and I'm just like, I kept watching to see who was going to spend extra time in the bathroom. I didn't believe them. I didn't believe this is how bikers could really live, because that's who I partied with here in Denver. And all that day, that whole day, every few minutes, one of the ladies that was with us, and many of the gentlemen, they'd come up to me and they'd put their arm around my shoulder, like, how are you doing? How are you hanging in there? And then they had these inside jokes with each other, and I watched them like laugh when they said things that were really kind of snarky. And I saw them kind of rib each other, and I saw them connect. I saw the way they connected, and I felt the community that they had built in their lives because this was their way of life. And I witnessed some of the most incredible beauty on the back of that motorcycle that day. I saw the sky more blue. I saw beautiful mountain scenery. I felt more fresh air. I felt welcomed. And for the first time, I believe, in my life, I had some light in my eyes. And at the end of the day, we rolled into Sacramento back in, and we went to a big speaker meeting and a dance. And when we walked in, there was probably like 300 people. They don't mess around with their dances and speaker meetings in California. And it was huge. And the speaker had talked about having 8 years clean and sober. And I remember hitting the guy that I'd been riding with. Did you hear that? She said 8 years. What? I did not believe it. I was like shocked that anybody could like not drink for 8 years or not drug for 8 years. And I danced for the first time clean and sober that night and had a really good time. And I met a guy named Rick who says, I'm an addict, my name is Rick. And I always wondered why he said that. And one time I asked him, he said, well, if I put my name first, I say in my selfishness. But if I put my addiction first, I'm reminded why I'm here. And since that conversation, I've always said I'm an alcoholic. My name is Paula. And I got home that night, and I just had this like crazy, wild, like elation. Like I believe without any hesitation in one day, my first day fully clean and sober, I fell in love with this way of life. And I know without any hesitation as well how lucky I am. I know it's not that way for everybody. But that's what my story is. That was a beautiful day. And I was welcomed, and I became a part of a community, and I understood the word connection. And at 3 days, I woke up, and I had this really cool epiphany. 3 days. I haven't blacked out for 3 days. I haven't tried to lie to anybody. I haven't stolen anything. I haven't tried to manipulate anybody. I remember where I was. And my conscience felt clean. And there was this like subtle shift in the self-hatred. 3 days. And for me, that was a big deal. And I remember it to this day because I was so kind of blown away at what it felt like to have a clean conscience. And I just wanted more, right? So I kept going to meetings, and I kept going to meetings. And somewhere in that first few weeks, I was sitting in a meeting, and I heard a guy say, for the newcomers, and you know, if you're a newcomer, you probably don't like that word. I really didn't like that word, but I knew it meant I needed to listen up. And he said, if you stick around, you're going to feel better. And then he clarified, I don't mean you're going to feel better. I mean, you're going to feel better. And the lights came on. This was a really foundational moment that I talk about to this day, because what happened for me there, I wanted to understand emotions. Why do I want to run from every emotion? Why is everything so hard? And half of it, I didn't even know what emotion it was. If someone would have asked me at 18 or 16 or 20, what are you feeling right now? You know, I wouldn't know. said that, that occurred to me. I want to learn how to feel. I want to learn how to identify them. I want to learn how to express them in a healthy way. I want to be an adult to my children and show them what this means. Have I aced it? No. My daughter's here. She can tell you. I have not aced this. But is it better than it's ever been? Yeah. I've worked really, really hard at this. At 18 months, I met my soulmate, and 2 weeks later, I married him. And 3 days later, I was pregnant. And 3 days before our first daughter was born, he fell off of a roof and shattered his right heel, broke his left wrist, had like a 7-hour surgery, and he was disabled for 18 months. So I have a newborn, a very disabled husband, and he's taken a lot of pain medication. And he gets a big, big settlement for a workers' comp claim. And he buys a motorcycle. And then he decides he wants to be an outlaw. And our life falls apart. And my little fairy tale, and I will say to this day, I was crazy in love with this man. I do believe it was a soulmate. I believe we have many soulmates. But wow, it was such a cool relationship until it wasn't. Until this disease came in and just absolutely ripped it apart. That's what happens. So I thought, I know what I'll do. We'll have another baby. That's going to save our marriage. So I got pregnant again. And I will say that for this short time, there was a little bit of a reprieve, and there was this hope, and 6 months pregnant, it all fell apart again. And I went through some of the absolute worst trauma of my entire life, behind addiction and being alone and not knowing how to navigate this and not drink at it. You know, and I'll be super raw here. The only reason I didn't drink is because I wasn't going to do what he was doing. No, my children are not going to see what they're seeing from you. Watch this. And gratefully, I had a very good friend and a very good sponsor at the time who also sat on me and held me and walked me through some pretty big devastation. So in 1996, I moved back to Colorado. Now, there's a whole lot of back and forth with this relationship in there. We stayed together for 8 years. It was tough. We did move back to Colorado together. He was clean. I was still clean and sober. And then he wasn't, and we got divorced. And just before my 9th sober anniversary, on a Sunday morning, I was alone, I was scared. My kids were safely at my sister's house. And I woke up just kind of devastated and scared, and I wanted to drink. Like, okay, nobody's gonna know. Kids are safe, nobody's gonna know. Maybe I can handle drinking better now. And I don't care if I can or not. And at the same time, I had this voice in my head saying, what are you doing? But I drove to a liquor store. And this was 1997. I didn't know liquor stores were closed on a Sunday. And I sat in my car and I had a little breakdown, cussed at God so bad. What in the world do you want me to do? And that's not what I said. I was upset, and I just had this breakdown, and I just kept looking at this sign that said closed, and I was like, and as I'm bawling, I opened my glove box, because moms have a stash of napkins there, and out falls the Alcoholics Anonymous meeting schedule. And there was the answer. That was God. Here, honey. Here I am. And I went to a meeting that Sunday morning called Crossroads. There's a few of you here who know Crossroads. Sunday morning, 9 a.m. in Aurora. It's a huge meeting now. That was my home group for quite some time. And when I was sitting in that meeting, there was a guy named Ernie who had an oxygen tank. And as I'm trying to pay attention, he starts talking about the Oak Alley Inn. Now, I've referenced the Oak Alley Inn and how much I hate this place. But when he said it this time, the memory struck, I don't want to be that kind of a drunk. I don't want my kids sleeping in a shack. And I listened, and I connected, and I raised my hand to speak. They didn't ask me. And I said, my recovery is in trouble. I'm in trouble. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be sober. I don't know how to do this life this way. And there's a whole lot of other stuff that's happened between then and there, but let me just say that I found a beautiful sponsor in that meeting who has been my sponsor for 24 years. And talk about the 11th step. Oof. So my first few years of sobriety, the community saved me. Going to meetings, it became autopilot, thank you. Service saved me. I've been answering calls for the hotline and night watch for 37 years. They threw me in right away when I first got sober. I've done my best to sponsor women in recovery since I finished my steps the first time. But when I met Dorothy, I'd been here for a while, I startled and I fumbled and I went through a couple sponsors that didn't go so well. She taught me about the 11th step. And when we first met, we agreed that we were going to meet every week for 6 weeks, but her first meeting with me, she made it very clear, I require a daily 11th step. I require prayer and meditation every day. That's a requirement if you want to work with me. Now, I wanted what she had. I loved her beautiful, welcoming, hospitable home. I loved her marriage. I loved her wisdom. I loved how well-read she was. I loved how well-spoken she was. I loved how funny she was. I wanted everything that she had. And that's how you find a sponsor. If you're curious, you find somebody and get to know them, not just what they say in meetings, get to know them, and find out if you really want what they have. But I wanted what she had. So in week 2, we meet. How's that step 11 going? I'm like, well, I prayed like twice this week, with my kids. Every day. Week 3, how's that step 11 going? Well, I did it like 4 days this week. I woke up, I lit a candle. Every day. And she had this look on her face like, if you can't do this, this may not work out, which scared me because I really wanted what she had. So I got on it. And when I met her on week 4, I had 7 days in a row of a daily commitment to divine alignment, and something changed. I recognized that I was much more responsive than reactive. I recognized that I was kinder, and I was more tolerant, not only of others, but also of myself. I recognized that I slept better, and that I navigated all of the stress of being a single mom 24/7 a lot better. And one of the things in my recovery that's always been a big curiosity, always, from the very beginning, what is alcoholism? What is addiction? What causes it? What are the roots? How come some people get it and some people don't? What is recovery? How come some people do it this way and some people successfully do it this way and others do it that way? I've always kind of had this curiosity and this kind of study. And I'll be very clear, I don't care how you do it, but I highly recommend it because it's a good way of life. Whether it's this way of life or another, get sober, learn recovery, and I swear you're going to live the best life. So I'm doing this thing. I'm working the steps. We did several versions of the steps. We did some ACA. We did the AA steps numerous times. I changed careers and became a super cool metaphysician. I went way, way beyond the 4th dimension and some of the stuff that I do. And I still lived this life of very active service. In fact, I made a career out of service. And I really, truly recognized something that shifted in my life. This curiosity led me to understand that there are 4 pillars of recovery. 1 is community, 2 is service, 3 is daily divine alignment, and 4 is a mentor. Not necessarily in that order. And when I have continued to focus on, do I have these 4 things in my life? activated and aligned, I live better. I like who I am. I don't have that self-hatred anymore. In fact, it's a lot quieter than it's ever been. You know, I actually feel worthy and I like who I am. There's a few things that I'd love to improve. And what's happened is, like, when I look back on 37 years being sober, I can tell you that, whoa, there's some growth. Like, I am not that person, you know, whoever she was. And I don't believe I'd be here. I truly 100% believe I am on borrowed time. My recklessness, my insanity out there was not pretty. And I have this really cool reflection, and when I look at it, all of the close calls and all of the things that didn't happen but should have, no DUIs, all the mornings that I woke up, and how many in here have gotten up and had to go walk the car? Afraid, what are you going to see? I used to walk the car. And especially if I saw it parked outside, oh, I got it home. So, yeah, I really truly believe that I'm on borrowed time. So, over the course of these years of living better, I've noticed, shortly after starting to work with Dorothy, I attracted some amazing, beautiful women who wanted what I have, who I still work with today. And I became a better parent, I became a better therapist, I became a better person, and just recently, I wrote my first book. And it was published in October, and one of the coolest things that happened, now there's two epiphanies about this guy that picked me up hitchhiking. One, I was 11 years sober before I realized that his name was JC. I never made the connection, but I get it now. One more of those beautiful little sparks of light where I know without any hesitation I was guided, I was guarded. The second is after I wrote this book, I was talking with my girlfriend, Michelle. She lives in Washington State. She was one of the people who was with me during so much of the mayhem of my separations. She took me and my daughters in without ever blinking an eye, and I can only say I hope that every one of you has someone like that Michelle in your life. Like, that's what we do for each other. We support each other, we help each other, we love each other. You say I need help, there is somebody who's gonna say, okay, what can I do? And she was that person. So we've been friends for a long, long time. My daughters are now 35 and 30, and one of the things they do like to share, they've never seen me drunk. That's cool, right? There's a few people who I do know your children have seen you drunk, but when they see you sober, they see you're okay, they see that you're trying to be happy and do what's right. You're making it right. Live this way, right? So anyway, I'm telling Michelle. So I wrote this book, and it's kind of about, you know, him picking me up, and it's my whole story. And I'm so sad that I don't even know how to find him. And she's like, you mean J.C. Mooney? She's been in touch with him this whole time. So I reach out on Facebook, and I'm like, oh my God, do you remember me? No. So we started to chat, and I sent him some pictures. He goes, oh yeah, now I remember you. And we had a great conversation, and we reconnected, and he made a point to come out for the book launch, which was just like so cool. And when I first got sober, I immediately got in a relationship like day one. The guy that took me riding, we dated for 6 months. No, I do not recommend it. I'm not recommending it. But he took me to like 150 meetings in 90 days. That man saved my bacon, and I'm incredibly grateful for him. And I got in touch with him too. So he's sending pictures, and we're having this really cool reconnection, and you know, we're sharing about all this old stuff. And what I can tell you is that this is the kind of stuff that happens when you step into recovery. There's magic. There is magic. If you work the steps, if you find a sponsor, if you show up for others, there is something that happens in the world that just kind of starts to recover. There's a reason that's the word. We make amends to ourselves, we make amends to our people, we start setting a better example in the world. We learn what it means to be worthy. We learn what self-respect means. We learn how to move beyond a place of that shame that eats our soul away. And we have these incredible little synchronicities that come together time and time and time again. And sometimes it's in reflection that we awaken to them, and sometimes it's right in the moment, you know? So I can't tell you how grateful I am to have this way of life. I can tell you that life doesn't stop happening just because I'm proud of my recovery or just because I'm in love with this way of life, and I truly am. Ask anybody who knows me, even those who don't like so much that I'm so in love with recovery. I love this way of life, and I have good reason. My soul got healed here. My soul is still healing. It is still growing. I know how to feel better. So I wish that for every one of you, right? No matter where you are on this path, I hope that you come back. I hope that you give of yourself in service. I hope that you find a sponsor or a mentor who has what you want. I hope that you embrace this community or some community of spirituality. And I really hope that you truly fall in love with that daily divine alignment. I'm really, really grateful to be here.